Hello, everyone. Here's Stefan from Cube-Tec, and today we have a really great man here for an interview. But before we start, we have to go back a little, and yeah, we're indeed going back in time. Because before our company Cube-Tec was founded, we were operating as a company called Spectral Design, developing algorithms for Steinberg to be released as plugins or tools within the Steinberg host applications like Wavelab or Cubase or Nuendo, for example. There was also, yeah, another section for the spectral design company, which was DSP-based algorithms, which were released by SPL in their rare digital hardware units, for example. Um, all that was starting in 1995 and 1996. And the spectral design heritage in audio processing is actually kept alive by Cube-Tec up to the present day. So our algorithms have been further developed, and our virtual precision instruments, or VPIs in short, are running as VST plugins today in countless studios all over the world, actually. But today we'd like to talk about the good old days and how everything started with real-time audio processing back in the mid 90s. And so I'm really, really happy to have Mr. Georg Walt from Graz in Austria here to answer some questions and to have a little discussion. So, hi, Georg. Thank you for being here.
Hi to Germany and hi for welcoming me. And I hope I can answer some questions. Not being an expert, but a lover of old plugins and old software.
Yeah. So that sounds really great and is a good start. But maybe you can tell us a bit about yourself and maybe your work or your studio, any projects or whatever comes to your mind right now.
I try to keep in the background and let my work speak for myself. And whoever comes my way gets exposed to what's interesting to me at that time, at that moment. So, which was analog for a long time. Um, where I think I've traveled every possible road and tried to build it in. Still do. So there's like standards I can't get rid of. But in the last year, I had a bit of a break, and unexpected due to a water damage. So to keep my mind occupied and keep myself not from going insane, it's all fixed by the way already. I started exploring vintage digital plugins, and I tried. I think I've succeeded a bit. Still try to optimize their integration into a modern workflow because they're forgotten. They're forgotten plugins, forgotten due to technological constraints. You can't keep old computers going forever. And that's a nice obstacle. And the results are great, actually. They're great, and yeah, that's how I came across spectral design after maybe 20 years being first exposed, and I was quite astonished what was possible back in the day.
Right. So you own all kinds of outboard gear, analog or digital, and old and famous microphones and all that stuff. So old and
But
new equipment, famous and infamous, but you seem to love especially older digital units. Are you a digital vintage fan? And if so, why?
well, when it comes to the love of analog, to me, it's all about errors. I like when units have a certain character, and that's what I try to integrate. So, um, since you mentioned analog, let's take the 1176, one of the famous compressors from Uray or the Universal Audio back in the day. They made a first revision. They made it cleaner with every revision up to revision H. And in the process, something was lost. The character was lost. And as things get rediscovered, as everything gets cleaner, tape noise isn't an issue anymore. You need to reintroduce a certain character, and that's why the blue stripes are famous again since years already. But the errors are not always on purpose. It's technological constraints. And when you think back in 1995, when the first TDM plugins came on the market and your first product hit, there was the Motorola DSP 65001. So basically, you could run one plugin on a chip. So those are real technological constraints. And to get around those constraints, you have to make sacrifices. And to my ears, as everything gets processor overpowered these days, everything gets totally clean. I'm on a quest to reintroduce those character stuff into a clean, hyper clean audio world where I think we live today.
Right. So basically, our denoisers and declickers back then
Well,
are going the opposite way.
well, back then it made totally sense. Everyone was still on tape, and you wanted to get everything clean, clean, clean. So to me personally, what set you apart back then was not your first run of declickers and denoisers, which were tools back then, essential tools, and they worked within the constraints, the technological. Like I mentioned, one plugin, one DSP chip in the early days. So you had to get real design outboard chassis with 12 Nubus cards in there to get like a few plugins going. So that was the early days. But what you did and what is really interesting, you started like with the first plugin guitar amp. I mean that's pretty revolutionary, and also pretty early you started with reintroducing harmonics, like with the spectralizer, which we have. Hang on. Yeah, which we have here. So basically, what this did to a computer mastering world of 1995, which was they were mastering with Wavelab 1.5, the first one to introduce real time. Hang on, get it here. To introduce real time plugin processing. I'm pretty proud I found this. So it was still not enough for the PCs of that day with 100 megahertz CPU. So those output units basically took two chips for the left and the right channel, and you could process stuff in real time, enhance stuff. That's what you really started when everyone was going clean. You already started introducing character. So that's the interesting stuff to me, to my ears.
Yes, thank you. I remember those days. I started with Spectral Design in 1996, and that was when the first PC plugins came out. So yeah, you mentioned the Red Velvet. That was the first guitar amp and the Spectralizer. But do you have any special favorite Spectral Design plugins from back then?
Well, it changes quite often due to what I think is needed. So um, there is the first tape machine you did. There is the first harmonics generator you did. There is the first, not the first, but the first best to my ears loudness maximizer. which is yeah an early mastering compressor. And I think the interesting is it's all voice by ear back in the day, so you can really hear it. Um, you had to tune everything by ear. That's for me interesting. And like I said, to run three plugins in real time in a mastering session, you had to have all those in outboard, and you could really be happy to run three plugins in 1995, 1996 on the PC platform. On the PC platform, the really revolutionary fact was 3.5, which I found an old prospect for, and that's how the plugin host looked back then, and that's how you looked back then. So really, the first introduction of proper GUIs, when everything was still in black and white and everything, you introduced the color red, which is pretty fancy. Um, yeah, like I said, it changes. It changes from uh, from what I think is needed, and that's what I try to introduce.
Yeah, of course. Um, so we've seen some plugin boxes with you, and we've seen the SPL hardware. So apart from being able to run more algorithms using outboard hardware, what's your opinion on the plugins versus hardware discussion in terms of sound, or maybe
Yes.
VST versus TDM or something like that, or maybe even Mac versus PC?
Mac versus PC back in the days would have looked like this. PC was always ahead with in terms of processing power. So PCs were lagging behind, not only from the version numbers, if you are really into those uh, old school days. Basically, PC started catching up in 1998. That's where you started really releasing a lot from for the active movie, DirectX, VST, PC platform. So if you really look at it, you develop for platforms that worked, that could keep up with the processing. And that's it. That's the technological constraints. And with each iteration of platform, small changes were made. With the DSP code, you can hear it. It's not a PC, Mac per se. It's just advancing the fine tuning the code over the different platforms and times. So, like everyone did, each new version um, to the ears of the developer brought enhancements like bit resolution internal, and oh, there's an error, let's change this. But to me, the most characters are in the early the most character is in the early units. I like the errors. Let's make mistakes and enjoy the mistakes. Not mistakes per se. It works. Everything works. But yeah, constraints sometimes yield good results, or we would never have been to the moon.
Yes, indeed. Um, so given your love for the old plugins, are you really using them in current projects? And if so, how are you doing it?
It's a battle with logistics. It's a battle with keeping old Macs alive and old PCs alive. It's an interesting battle. It's shenanigans basically. It's what makes stuff interesting. It's yeah, like why do people keep their old 8-bit computers alive? Because to them it's uh, it's 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 a science, it's an art. It's also a respect for the art of the days. The code is art to me. basically. And if you want to apply the art to music, which is also an art, you gotta take the extra steps. And my approach is always changing. What you could do, not saying that's what I do, is take a bounced music file, take it to the old computer, reconnect, upload it with a zip drive, for instance, or whatever. Process it. If you like the result, take it back to the new session. So flipping tapes, basically, in digital form. That's the most basic approach. In the recent years, new upgrades for old restrictions were made. So basically, Mac was all SCSI until 1999. Basically, those old SCSI drives were really loud if you had to work next to them. So there's a Blue SCSI project now, which is basically an SD card on a adapter. So you can swap SDs already, which is a huge advantage. So you can take your modern project to the old computer, flip in the SD card, process it, take it back. There's other approaches I'm currently pursuing, which involves like if you remember back then there was the big processing advantage going to 24 bits. So up until 1995, Pro Tools free everything was 16-bit, 44.1 kilohertz. And then Logic were the first to go 24 bits, really use this stuff with Pro Tools 4.0. So basically, if you want really gnarly old stuff, you take it to the newest platform and have everything 16-bit. So that if you want a bit more high-end sound, you take it to the 24-bit stuff, which is like pre-mix and mix level Pro Tools hardware. And then you have other options. They all had digital in and outputs back then, so you could think about sending stuff there digitally, process it, and send it back, which is a huge undertaking still. Maybe I'll get there someday.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting. So you should have a large pile of old computers, Macs or PC, and keep them running.
It never hurts. It never hurts. Um, yeah, backups basically. Backup for the old Macs, and but keeping the stuff going is where a lot of help from good guys like Jacob Palomsky is a Mac guru. He really helps me keep those things going. So basically, if you enter the shenanigan Mac nerd territory, you'll find other nerds who have the same interests, and then it's a teamwork, and that's interesting in itself.
Right. Yeah, there have to be nerds. So that's for sure. This was really, really, really interesting, and I'm looking forward to follow you with your plans to optimize your way of working maybe, and um, maybe as a last question, can you name some plugins that you would consider being milestones in plugin development? This does not need to be spectral design necessarily, but or does not need to be your favorite plugins, but maybe things that you consider being milestones. Well, I guess you mentioned the Red Velvet at the beginning already as being the first guitar amp plugin. Anything else that comes to your mind?
In terms of plugin, there weren't a lot back then, but what's interesting to me is when character is reintroduced, basically. So there is the first console emulation input emulation plugin by Waves, the Renaissance compressor, which is still in use today, still being used on vocals every day. In 1998, I think it came out, which is really important. Um, and for me personally, everything you guys did, that's the free filter, for instance. The first, it was a linear bass, one third octave, 30 band EQ, which you could capture another CD and apply to yours and individually tweak it. Stuff which is today reinvented, basically, which you guys started. And of course with new DSP and but there's the SPLDS basically, which you emulated as well, I think, if I'm not wrong.
Yes,
So
that's correct.
that's a proper hardware emulation in those days. That's unheard of, basically. So that's really nice. Yeah, the TL audio EQ, I didn't mention it. Another analog emulation is the Quadro Fuzz, which I'm, and not only I am, which is like world standard in old distortion. Yeah, the first that's being so close to me, I didn't mention it before. That's really a go-to distortion unit, and it's multiband. Multiband back then, there were like one plugin was multiband by Antares. The what's it called? The multiband dynamics 2. Yeah, that's in 1994, 1995. So, but it's for clean, it's for mastering. There was no concept of introducing distortion and grid and character back then. Everyone was going clean. So that's where you really showed musicality. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for character, musical ideas, stuff where the ears are used and not just numbers, you know. Clean, we have enough today. Way enough clean. So, and when everyone is running out of ideas, what next analog classic to model? Well, let's start with digital. I think we have had analog enough. It's time to start modeling vintage digital plugins. We're there. I think so.
Well, I think that's a great statement for for the end of this interview. So I thank you very much for your time and for your nice words about our algorithms. And yeah, I wish you much success on your journey, and we will surely stay in touch. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Have a nice day. Bye.